You know, if you ask the average non-car guy here in the US what he knows about the Toyota Land Cruiser, he'll probably say one of two things. Oh yeah, the Land Cruiser. Isn't that one of those weird foreign jobs from the 70s that kind of looks like a Jeep but with a funny grill? Or he'll say, oh yeah, the Land Cruiser. Saw one of those on the school run today. You won't believe how much it costs. And yeah, both of those are somewhat true. But that non-car guy is kind of missing the point of the Land Cruiser, because it is really the godfather of SUVs. Right, so why is the Land Cruiser the godfather of SUVs? Well, there are really two main reasons. The first reason is the philosophy. If it works, don't frickin' touch it. And the second reason is the Land Cruiser can be found absolutely anywhere in the world. Let's talk about the first one first. So the headlights here are a good example of the if it works, don't frickin' touch it philosophy. This is a 2008 Toyota Land Cruiser. It's what's known as a 200 series. You can still buy essentially the same vehicle brand new off a showroom today. And back in 2008, this truck cost between 60 and 70 grand. It was the most expensive Toyota you could buy, and it still had halogen headlights. Now back in the day, in 2008, you could have gone out and bought a Range Rover for this price. You could have bought a fully loaded GMC Yukon, or you could go out and buy a Toyota with halogen headlights. But this perfectly represents this vehicle's philosophy. The bulb, if it burns out, you fix it. You don't need to replace the whole headlight. It just works, it works well, it's reliable, and it's easy to fix. That's what makes this Land Cruiser so special. Now, of course, if you were to buy a brand new 200 series here in the US, you're going to get a more sophisticated headlight design. But even today, the Land Cruiser's overall design is extremely subtle. To the non-car guy here in the US, that could be a Highlander. That could be even maybe a RAV4 if you really didn't know your cars. But it's what's underneath that makes the Land Cruiser so special. Now, going along with that tried and true, it just works technology is the engine. Here in the US, the only option available is a 5.7 liter V8. It's called the 3UR FE. It's not particularly special in terms of sophistication. It doesn't have 14 turbos and electric assist and all sorts of weird cutting edge materials. It's just a basic V8 mated to a 6-speed automatic. But it's a V8 that will always start and it'll run for a long time. These engines are known for going well over 300,000 miles before they need a rebuild. It's got a timing chain. It's just a very durable unit. Now, if you go abroad, this 200 series can be had with a diesel, and not just any diesel, a 4.5 liter twin turbo V8 diesel. How cool would it be to get that here in the US? Right, so coming into this 200 series Land Cruiser, well, it's actually super luxurious. Here in the United States, the Land Cruiser is only available in one trim with maybe one option, and they come fully loaded. This is old school luxury though. Let me show you what I mean. Now, a lot of luxury vehicles today and even in 2008 really incorporated a lot of exotic materials, be it interesting titaniums or aluminums, weird textures everywhere. The Land Cruiser went with a different philosophy. It's got wood, and it doesn't just have a little bit of wood, it has wood everywhere. It's got huge swaths of wood here on the center console. The steering wheel has wood. There's wood across the dashboard. It's pretty old school in its theory, but it still makes the vehicle feel very luxurious, especially if you really hate trees. There's a new Land Cruiser once every about 10 years. That's a really long product life cycle, which means that this 2008 is a 200 series, a brand new one that you can go out and buy for $85,000 is also a 200 series. What this means though is that even these older ones, they feel pretty up to date actually. I mean, it feels like a pretty new car. Yeah, the new ones have been refreshed, but even this 2008 model, it could still pass as a very luxurious brand new vehicle. The screen here is an 8-inch display, and it's got just about everything you'd expect. It's got navigation, it's got satellite radio, it's got info displays. It's pretty sophisticated in general, although the graphics are starting to look a little bit, well, PS2 if we're being honest.
This is
probably the weirdest feature in the Land Cruiser, especially for 2008. Keep in mind this was 10 years ago. No, it's not the split center console. That's kind of weird, but it's this right here. It looks fairly normal, except it's a refrigerator. And when you flick it on, you can actually feel it get cold right away. It works really well. The issue is, currently we have hats and wires and stuff in here because, well, the glove box just isn't big enough to store this stuff alone. You really need to put some of this stuff in the middle here, and it kind of makes the fridge relatively redundant, unless you want a really cold hat. The interior, however, is very elegant. Take a look at these little heated seat controls. There's no reason why these need to be recessed and then pop out when you use them, but it makes it just a little bit more elegant. And there's about 1, 2, 3, 18, 25, 30, about a million different seat adjustments in terms of the temperature. It just goes to show how elegantly produced this vehicle is. Even though the general interior design here is fairly similar to a new Land Cruiser, we are of course missing some fairly basic luxury tech, like there are no USB ports, there's of course no Apple CarPlay, there are no safety systems on board, which is probably a good thing in the long run, but it does mean you get to make good friends with your aux cord again. Even though the Land Cruiser absolutely oozes luxury, it's what's underneath this relatively conservative bodywork that makes this Land Cruiser so special. It's the off-road credibility. You can go anywhere in the world and find these blasting through dunes, charging through mud pits. It's so good off-road, it's so dependable. This is a vehicle that the UN uses. It's their go-to. Here are some clues as to that pedigree. Take a look down here. We have not one, but 2 recovery points, tow hooks in the front. And that focus on durability and off-road control extends to the entire design of the vehicle. You're not going to find some composite titanium aluminum based unibody underneath. You've got steel on top of more steel. That's right, body on frame. There's a rigid frame underneath this. Well, is this aluminum? No, underneath this steel. And that, if it just frickin' works, leave it philosophy extends to the back underneath. Now the front does have an independent suspension setup, but in the rear you won't find some sophisticated multi-link independent setup. It's a solid axle, because solid axles have worked for horses and carts and buggies and trucks and wheelbarrows for centuries. It'll work for the Land Cruiser. Check out these tail lights. $70-some thousand, and they're still halogens, because once again, it just works. Now, if you step up to the Lexus LX, which is essentially the cousin to this vehicle, very similar underneath, you do get those LED taillights as well as trick hydraulic suspension. But in the Land Cruiser, I think these will do. All right, check this out. Think your Range Rover is cool with its split tailgate? The Land Cruiser has one too. Fold this down, easy flat place to load stuff in, and I can sit down and chill out. Now there's some more cool stuff back here. In the tailgate itself, we have cubbies. So we've got one cubbies for hats and gloves and things. This cubby actually has a toolkit in it. So once again, Land Cruiser, a nod toward durability and fix it yourself goodness. We also have some really cool stuff back here. We have a power outlet and we have these seats. Now Land Cruisers have been doing this fold down rear seat arrangement for a long time, for decades. Now I read somewhere, I don't know if this is true, that initially they did this so they could put a full-size spare tire underneath, which this one has, but this one also has the classic fold down rear seats. Here's how they work. There's a handle you pull here, these pop on down, then there's a handle you pull here, those fold on up, and then that just folds up like that and can be folded down for extra visibility. This is actually an 8-passenger vehicle, 2, 3, 3. So if you've got a big family and you want to take them across the Sahara, I think maybe the Land Cruiser is the vehicle for you. There is more proof of the Land Cruiser off-road credibility when you step inside. This Land Cruiser is a permanent 4-wheel drive vehicle, so there's no 2-high, 4-high lever to switch. There is, of course, a switch to go into 4-low. It's this pretty crummy feeling little knob. It's not very satisfying when you flick it into 4-low. I really want a big clunky lever, but a little knob will do, I guess. But there is some cool stuff in here. Along with a pretty sophisticated traction control system, we have a center differential lock and this little knob down here that reveals all sorts of fun secrets about this Land Cruiser's off-road pedigree. If Think your Tacoma TRD Pro is sophisticated with its multi-terrain select and crawl control? Well, the Land Cruiser has you beat by over 10 years. Check this out. It's one of the early versions of crawl control. It only has 3 speeds, slow, medium, and fast, and it feels a little bit like, well, what's a careful way to put it? Sneakers in a dryer. But it does work, it does get you over what you need to do, and check out what the manual says the different speeds are for. Now, according to Toyota, this is what the different speeds are for. In high mode, effective when ascending a slope of rubble. Yeah, that's a weird way of putting it. Medium mode, effective when traveling on snow mounds or descending a slope of rubble. And of course, low mode, effective when traveling on rocks and pebbles. So if you ever come across any pebbles, you gotta put in 4 low, engage crawl control, because those pebbles will really hold up your Land Cruiser. Now, like most Toyotas, we even have an ECT power button. You turn that on and it tells you ECT power is engaged in the instrument cluster. Not really sure if that gives you any extra ponies or plays with the transmission programming, but it is there. There's also a second start mode, so if you're in snow and you want the transmission to start in second gear, go ahead and engage that, and off you go. One other weird button up here that you don't really see in a lot of other vehicles is the ionizing filter. It's got a little man who is clearly breathing through some dots and lines, but apparently it does actually work in the Land Cruiser. We also have a button for the rear defrost, which is a little bit unusual in the Land Cruiser. Let me show you out back here. Right, so a rear defrost, how interesting could that possibly be? Well, you've got the standard lines in the back that clear the rear view, but you also get, check this out, clarity along the side, because the heating elements are incorporated in the rear quarter windows as well. The Land Cruiser here really likes buttons, and they're mostly square and pretty unimaginative buttons, but you push it, it does its job, you can move on. And the headlight squirters, they're actually pretty cool. One set of buttons I absolutely love on the Land Cruiser are the window controls. They're one touch up and down, not just on the driver window like so many Toyota products are, but on all 4 windows. Thank you, Toyota. This needs to be mandatory on all products. Alrighty, check out this rear seat, and it's actually super luxurious back here as well. We have automatic climate control for just the rear passengers. We have heated seats for both the left and the right passenger here in the back seat. And we have a remote control that does this. Check it out. There's an open button. Oh yes. Rear seat entertainment. How cool is that? And now for my second point, that you see Land Cruisers absolutely everywhere in the world. Can't really say this about your brand new Yukon. You might find a Land Cruiser taking the kids to school in Iowa. You might find a Land Cruiser in Cape Town doing humanitarian relief. The Land Cruiser can be found everywhere and anywhere, and that's because it's an incredibly well-made, incredibly durable vehicle. It's hard to demonstrate, but let me give it a shot. And now we get to the biggest point as to why the Land Cruiser is the godfather of SUVs. You see, at this price point, $70,000+, it's relatively easy for manufacturers to sell 550 horsepower supercharged V8s, 14-inch displays, magnetic suspension. What's a lot harder to sell is this experience right here. Let me just go ahead and turn the fan off for the climate control. We're putting along on a dirt road, and you hear nothing. There's no squeaks, there are no rattles. Every button in here works, the AC works, the heater works. Every control operates like new. And that's not that exciting, except that this truck has 145,000 miles. And it drives like a brand new truck. It's that longevity, that durability, that incredible sense of reliability that makes the Land Cruiser such a special vehicle. It's hard to sell reliability. They only sell about 3,000 Land Cruisers a year here in the US. And for $85,000, you can buy way more features, way more superchargers, way more electrification, way more displays. But you can't necessarily sell this. And that's what makes the Land Cruiser such an amazing truck. As always, I'm Tommy with the Fast Lane Car. Be sure to stay tuned to tflcar.com for more news, views, and real-world Land Cruiser off-road reviews.